How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it breaking down the latest of Mets land. And in today's Big Mets Update segment, that being August 4th, 2025, we're going to get into how the Mets have not only had rotation woes, as we broke down in our past night's post-game show / reaction to Frankie Montas being nothing short of batting practice yet again. And to continue that Frankie Montas discussion today, we're going to hear from Carson Mendoza shortly, who spoke in the media not long ago, making it known that Frankie Montas' certainty as a piece in this rotation is now far from it. I'll expand as to why exactly that is, who we could see in this Mets rotation between McLean and Sproat sooner than later, which one makes more sense over the other if you have to pick one there, that being David Stearns and the Mets. And it goes without saying, this Mets team needs rotational reinforcements. With Paul Blackburn turning the corner, Tyler McGill throwing bullpens, those things are good and all, but is that really need a mover the way that there is high upside with some of these top pitching prospects? More than likely not. So we're going to get into these arms, what's there to like about them, which one makes most sense to get the call, and when, along with Carson, Benge, who has been absolutely dominating there in Double-A. And when I tell you that Benge, the Mets' top outfield prospect, has been dominating, he's quite literally putting up some of the best numbers in all of the minor leagues right now, warranting the discussion, could we see Carson Benge hit this Mets team as soon as early 2026? That and much more, along with our series preview between the Mets and the Guardians that we're about to break down. So hit that like and subscribe on your way, and everybody, thank you so much again for 34,000 subscribers and for the continued support from our first ever event, that being Wardy Day at Citi Field this past Friday, guys. As a further thank you for 34K especially, we're giving away to one lucky subscriber a Mets jersey of whatever player they currently want on the platform. And all you need to do to get involved is make sure you subscribe here, as well as to chime into our live show Thursday evening there on the Mets off day. That's separate from our members only Q&A segment that we're doing. We're doing back-to-back live streams, one for our members only, the other there for each and every one of you to break down Mets topics and to give away that jersey. So sit back, relax, and get ready for the ride, which is our latest Metropolitan breakdown here. But I want to see your initial reaction to the following topics that we're about to break down in the comments down below, including your thoughts between McLean and Sproat. If you have to pick one, who do you think is more warranted to get the call and why? But folks, let's waste no time by thanking our amazing sponsors that make today's show happen with our great friends. They're at SeatGeek, that many of you guys know. Head over to SeatGeek and utilize our app, because as you guys can see alongside me here, you have their app with a grading scale that's so easy to navigate. If you buy a ticket, say in the 7 through 10 range and the green, it's a fantastic bang for your buck, versus if you say buy a ticket in the 1 through 4 range and the red range, it's not a good bang for your buck and you're overspending big time. So if you guys want to get a Citi Field this week, in which we know it's going to be a packed crowd, a roaring crowd every single day, maybe you want to get ahead on NFL tickets with the season right around the corner, whatever you need in the ticketing space, SeatGeek with over 70,000 active events to choose from, making them the number one rated ticketing app in the game today for a reason, has you covered. Simply utilize our promo code WARDY10, link down below in the description, for 10% off your next ticket purchase, and shout out to SeatGeek as always. Now folks, let's get right into this, and let's begin with what Carson Mendoza had to say to the media this past day in regards to Frankie Montas and what now finally feels like his uncertain future in this Mets organization, or at least in this Mets rotation. Let's take a look at what Mendy had to say.
Wasn't working for Montas today.
Yeah, he just couldn't get swing and misses. Pitch selection, location. I mean, that pitch to Dever was right down the middle, a four-seam right there on the nitro zone, and when you do that to good hitters, they're going to make you pay. And it seems like, that first inning, stuff-wise, the sinker was good. I thought he got some swing and misses with the split, but then on that third inning, they put the ball in play, they hit some balls hard, and then Devers got him, with a big one there. But overall, just not getting swing and misses, location, and he got hit.
Is Montas' role up for discussion at all going forward?
I mean, we just got done with the game here, He's got to be better. He knows that, So, yeah, we just got done through the game, so.
Now, that comment by Carson Mendoza was only 13 seconds long, but it was so much more important than I think the eye may initially tell you. And here's why. every single time this season, and really since Mendy has become the Mets skipper, the one commonality that we have seen when asked about players' utilization on the team and the rotation in the lineup, he goes quickly to bat for those players, knowing that they're not going anywhere. When he's been asked in the past about different rotational pieces, he's made it known, in the case of Tower, McGill, among others, that, they're a piece of the puzzle here. We expect to see them the next turn in the order, hopefully have a better outing than the one prior, something along those lines. So for Mendy to quickly shoot down the notion of what is now next for Frankie Montas by reiterating how the game just ended tells us all we need to know. Finally, it does appear that even after David Stearns invested $34 million, 17 plus million in AAV across a 2-year span at least for Frankie Montas, that the skipper and Carlos Mendoza appears to have had enough. And I don't blame him. Every Mets fan feels the exact same way. That's why we were kind of having a little bit of a yelling fest, but just more so out of frustration than anything, as Montas, who I will say was, hung out to dry yesterday when he clearly didn't have it. But at the same time, how much can you fault Carlos Mendoza for keeping Montas in and just for innings when he continues to be batting practice the way that he is? Every single start that he's had out there, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 thus far, he has pretty much not been able to give the Mets any length whatsoever. He has been throwing batting practice with the meatballs, like he himself said, throwing middle. Like, what are we doing here to Devers? I agree. What are you doing, Frankie Montas? This is the same Frankie Montas that clearly showed up to camp this year out of shape, and I know that Montas was raving to the media how much he believes he's the best cook now entering the Mets fold. But here's the problem, Montas. You might be great with your cooking skills, but it's not helping the fact that you, my friend, were out of shape heading in the season. Then you mean to tell me that as soon as you signed that $34 million contract with the Mets, mind you, the Mets passed on Luis Severino at $6 million more total on a 2-year, $40 million contract offer that Severino presented the Mets before signing for $60+ million on the largest contract in the history of now the Sacramento Athletics and their organization. Now, getting back to Montas here, you see he goes down right away in spring training with injury. He's out for multiple months, mind you, when the Mets were looking for him to be a stronghold and mainstay in this rotation. The same Frankie Montas that had 30 starts last year between the Cincinnati Reds and the Milwaukee Brewers. The Mets even faced Montas in the wild card, if you guys remember that. Feels like yesterday. So as we fast forward all these months later, Montas returns to this Mets rotation, and he's nothing short of inconsistent. So inconsistent that after allowing 7 earned runs and even right around 4 innings in his past start this past day, he has a 6.68 ERA or so. Now listen, I'm all for giving players the benefit of the doubt. I'm always that kind of guy that wants to make sure that players get a proper leash before you make a decision on them. But in the case of Frankie Montas, I think the leash has already been long enough. I think it's time to not only shorten that leash, but let's go ahead and cut that leash. And when I say cut that leash, I do not anticipate the Mets to designate him for assignment. That's a lot of money that they'll be eating when Montas can obviously opt into that contract for 2026. And he's going to at this rate because he's been horrendous, mind you. You have to bear in mind that if you're Carlos Mendoza, it's time to make a change. The Mets are still right at the top in first place. They're a half game out of the Phillies right now. And it's a gauntlet. What seems like even the Miami Marlins playing as great as they are lately, playoffs are never a guarantee until you're finally in said position. And we know how much of a gauntlet it is out of the National League in itself to not only win the division out of the National League East, but ultimately to just crack a wild card spot. Every game is imperative. Every game is mightily important. And now that we're here in the month of August, it's about time to get locked in for crunch time. And if Frankie Montas is going to continue to be this liability, why give him any more looks in this rotation when you have some top prospects that you can rightfully consider that are long overdue to be considered? And I won't go too long on that tangent because I spent the past hour in a live stream, not the past hour, but I spent an hour in our live stream this past night breaking down to each and every one of you the flaws as to why David Stearns hasn't called up these prospects yet, why they should be, how contradictory it is, as we're going to likely see one of these guys in the coming days with this club, and why. So Frankie Montas, it does appear that his rotation stance might finally be coming to an end. And should that be the case, everybody, what we would anticipate to see, at least my assumption at this point in time, is that we'll likely see Montas be moved to the bullpen, where I think he honestly could thrive and have success. Now, granted, we say that when who knows if Montas is at all going to be able to get acclimated and adjusted in the bullpen. But what is one thing that the Mets have been trying to find all year long that they haven't, between Paul Blackburn's continued injury-riddled career with the Mets tenure tenure since he landed here at the deadline last year. I say that as Blackburn is pretty much healthy now, but the Mets don't love Blackburn. They were actively shopping him plenty at this year's deadline because they know he is just another arm added to the mix and not a whole lot more that meets the eye. He doesn't have swing and miss stuff. He's a ground ball pitcher that as best can go 6 innings of 3 earned run or less, but you know that there's a lot of concerns with Blackburn and the stability that he would likely not bring to this rotation barring changes. I say that as if Blackburn doesn't come out and dominate. If he does, then fantastic. I'll be ecstatic, but we got to wait to see for that to happen. In the meantime, the Mets have really not found that lawn man that they've been looking for. You know, they got stretches of it earlier this year when Max Kranick utilized in various situations. We just had Austin Warren go 4 shutty, having a starter outing that Frankie Montas wish he had as a last-minute call-up of a reliever as Rico Garcia was designated for assignment. Actual transaction going the other way over the past 24 hours or so. Austin Warren was fantastic, and I look forward to seeing more of him in this bullpen when that'll be warranted. But Montas now has an opportunity, and for the Mets, to thrive in that multi-inning relief role, if not be obviously a shutdown reliever, because the Mets have quality on the bullpen front. When you look at the Edwin Diaz's, who was just named reliever of the month, rightfully so, for the second time this year. Going on a quick tangent, but a rightful one. Congratulations to Edwin Diaz. In case you guys did not see the news there, officially anointed their NL reliever of the month. His second reliever of the month award this year. I believe the first was back in May or so. He won 10 games, 11 innings, 0 earned runs, 7 saves, and was absolutely dominant with his strikeouts per usual. So Edwin Diaz, congratulations, my friend. He's accompanied by the flame-throwing cue the hell's bells, baby, and Ryan Helsley. Then you got one of the nastiest relievers in baseball, one of my personal favorites long before he became a Met this year, that being in the submariner Tyler Rogers. Man, do I love that guy. You got Brooks Raley, you got Gregory Soto, and then you look on the lesser end to a certain degree, you got Reed Garrett, got Ryan Stanek, who's been batting practice. Is he going to get DFA'd soon? It's possible. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And then obviously Austin Warren barring changes. So the bullpen is not the liability for this team, but the problem is a rotation that continues to not give it length, which overly taxes said bullpen. That was a big part of the reason as to why David Stearns built a quote-unquote super bullpen at this year's deadline, was to help compensate for the lack of competence that they're getting from their rotation. Something that David Stearns obviously had a heavy hand in building, and between Griffin Canning going down for the entire season, between Clay Holmes, who now has a chance to finally right the ship as he'll be starting game 2 of that series against the Guardians that we will preview later on in the show. But if Clay Holmes doesn't go beyond, say, 4.5, 5 innings again, that further proves how much the Mets are in desperate need of quality as well as length and their rotation. And it's an absolute shame that we've reached the point now in the season that we're not deferring to just, key external targets, because everyone not named Merrill Kelly was not traded at this past year's deadline. But now we have to defer to young, while very exciting and having high ceiling, also completely inexperienced and an absolute fat question mark as to what you're getting in Mr. Brandon Sproat and Noel McLean. So if Frankie Montas does in fact move the pen in the coming days, he should not get a start in the next turn in the order. If he does, we'll be on the platform right away to yap about it on how much it's an absolute joke that the Mets are continuing to throw away baseball games because they're trying to save face for the $34 million that they're allowing to go right down the drain as soon as they went pen to paper with that Frankie Montas contract. And I'll be the first to say, I know I'm not the first to say this, but I'm one of many. I didn't hate the Montas contract when it happened. Did I love it? No. But I saw the upside for a guy that made proper adjustments after getting traded the Brewers at the deadline last year from Cincinnati. I saw a guy that had 30 starts last year for the most part, being healthy after having an injury plagued previous couple seasons between his short tenure with the Yankees there, and then so on and so forth. Get us fast forward to present day. I can, without question, tell you that it's easy for me to admit when I'm wrong. In this case, I was very wrong on Frankie Montas in the sense of hoping that he could be something greater than what he actually is. So, with Frankie Montas destined hopefully for the pen next, now our next segment in this discussion has everything to do with Mr. Brandon Sproat and Noel McLean. Now, when we think of who makes more sense when evaluating this Mets rotation, it's actually not as clear-cut of an answer as maybe you could have asked yourself a couple months ago. Because a couple months ago, when we first had this discussion, many of you Mets fans, including myself, fell in the exact same category, which was as follows. It needs to be Noel McLean, because Noel McLean has done something no other Mets starter has done at AAA this season, and that has been mightily consistent for more than a month span. McLean was moved up there that we saw to AAA after, I believe, the first month and a half of the season there, going back to, I want to say sometime in early to mid-May that he finally got moved up from the Rumble Ponies there to AAA Syracuse. Since that point, Noah McLean has been an absolute dog that you guys can see from the stat line down below. In 77.2 innings, he has 14 games, 55 hits, 32 walks allowed, 26 total earned runs, a whopping 83 strikeouts for a man with a just over 3-year ERA with all these AAA starts. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that Noah McLean is just like a year and a half removed from being a two-way player? So talk about impressive. The man out of OSU who is not only looking fantastic on the mound, but hitting big bombs there for his college club. Doing the exact same thing that Carson Benge was doing, his buddy, because they were teammates at OSU. Can't wait to talk about Carson Benge later on this video because he is going to be a great discussion to have. But before we get there, let's emphasize Noah McLean and what he's doing right. What he's doing right is being, without question, one of the most dominant while being the most consistent starter that you could ask for at the AAA level. And while McLean doesn't have a fastball touching 102 to the degree that a Brandon Sproat does, he does have off-speed and breaking pitches that profile just in a complete class. I shouldn't say class of their own, but they look really good. Not only do you have the multi-pitch mix, you have the fastball that's looking electric, you have the sweeper that has obviously been nails for him. Everything about his arsenal feels like it can play up at the major league level right here, right now. So when we think about, okay, why aren't the Mets going with a guy like Noah McLean right away? Well, it's not so much as to why they aren't as to they just haven't at this point. And it's been because of their own stubbornness for their various reasons that we emphasized in yesterday's live stream. So make sure to check it out. But Noah McLean, everybody, who was actually considered for a call-up already multiple times this season by the Mets, they ended up going with more of their spot start options and Blade Tidwell, Justin Hageman, and Brandon Waddell. What do all those three pitchers have in common? None of them are going to be positively impacting this Mets team for the better for the remainder of the season. When you look at Blade Tidwell, he's a San Francisco Giant now. When you look at Brandon Waddell, he just helped the Rumble Ponies pitch a complete game shutout. But on a rehab assignment. When you look at Justin Hageman, Hageman does not give you length, nor does he give you all that much quality. So I don't know why we're wasting our breath having that discussion. So Noah McLean has been there. He's done that already this season. He's already proven his worth when it comes to the stability and the consistency. I think you can make a rightful argument that he may be the man to get the call next. But if it is not going to be Mr. Noah McLean, then it's going to be someone else. And that someone else that could be, if it's not going to be Noah McLean, is the next best option, if not the best option, depending on who you talk to, and that is Mr. Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat, let's take a look at his July, because this is where we have the difference in consistency. Sproat did not start the year well in AAA whatsoever. He was looking more the same that he did towards the end of last season, where he was very overwhelmed, you could tell, with handling AAA batters and making that big adjustment from AA to AAA. Sproat dominated all of the 2024 minor leagues, starting out in single A, mind you, making all the way to AAA in that same season, but sadly, Brandon Sproat just didn't really have that proper adjustment going towards the end of the 2024 year. Fast forward to 2025, he begins the first couple months, doesn't look good, doesn't have his consistency. What changes in the month of July? It's twofold. It starts with Francisco Alvarez, right? For those that don't recall, Francisco Alvarez was sent down for a little bit of a minor league, not rehab stint, but just a minor league stint to get himself right, both offensively and defensively. And that most certainly has worked, as Alvarez had another quality game for the Mets yesterday, hitting not only for power, but spreading for all fields of power that we saw, as he had a multi-hit game for the Mets, driving in a pair of runs and doing so. So I'm loving what we're getting from Alvy. But Alvy, when he first got sent down to AAA before the All-Star break this year, who did he help out a lot? Yes, you guessed it, Brandon Sproat. He caught multiple games for Brandon Sproat in which he dominated, and you'd have to wonder just how much of a factor the Alvarez have and the confidence instilled in Brandon Sproat, who, let's not forget, is turning 25, I believe, in the month of September. So I don't really know how much more the Mets feel like they need to wait in the case of giving Brandon Sproat an opportunity. He's not getting any younger, and it's prime time to consider him for this major league club, because what Sproat has been able to do this past month has been nothing short of jaw-dropping. In 27 innings, he has a 0.67 ERA and has 33 strikeouts. Now, as I said earlier, he has not been as consistent as a guy like Noah McLean in AAA. But what he has done the past month is telling you of the upward swing that he's finally on, including his latest outing of 5 innings, 9 strikeouts, 0 earned runs there that we saw in, I believe, the last day or so of July 31st or so. Pardon me, everybody. I just have to cough quick because I got a tickle in my throat. Give me 1 second. All right, and we're back. Apologies about that. So to expand more on Brandon Sproat, what I have to say is as follows. Sproat is a player that probably has highest upside and pure stuff if it plays right at the major league level. I mean, that velocity is no joke, and you can see the confidence is oozing out of the guy now. The big thing for Sproat wasn't as much with the stuff as it was the confidence. Like, he clearly looks like, I don't want to call him a mental midget, so what I'm going to go with is more of one that was really just trying to find himself and his mental game. There was a hurdle. There was a barrier in the way of Brandon Sproat and his own personal confidence after dominating in all 2024, then moving up to AAA and getting a whole smack dab of reality where he was just not being able to adjust properly. What we have seen between Francisco Alvarez performing well with him, catching his games, as well as what he's doing without Alvarez, is he's rearing back. He's letting loose. He's not holding back on the velocity, nor is he holding back on just being the pitcher that he's been, which is what's helped him dominate and skyrocket in the Mets minor leagues in such a short period of time since he's been drafted. So when we look at upside, McLean and Sproat are neck and neck. And I think you can make the rightful argument, why consider calling up one when we should call up both? I'm not saying you're wrong for that whatsoever. I'm just telling you, beggars can't be choosers here, and we've been begging for one of these prospects to get moved up over the past 2 months now. I'm not going to go and see Sproat and McLean called up at the same time until we actually see that official announcement by the Mets. But now we get to the conclusion. Who makes more sense and who is more likely between Brandon Sproat and Noah McLean to get the call to the bigs? And this is a great argument because I really do see both sides of the coin here. And personally, knowing that the Mets need a spark in the rotation, I think what is best for them is to make sure that they're going with all reliable. As awesome as Brandon Sproat has been, I think that there is a ever so slight edge to someone like Noah McLean because I think that stability carries you a long way. Sproat has had a great past month of baseball, and I will be far from complaining if he gets the call over Nolan. But all I'm saying is I think consistency is important, and Nolan has done that better than anyone else at the AAA level throughout the entire course of the season for the most part. So whether it's McLean or Sproat, that is yet to be seen, but it goes without saying one of these dominant, high electrifying, high upside arms will absolutely be considered by the Mets if it hasn't been already. And yes, we have beaten this drum months on end, going back to when the Mets had a glaring hole in their rotation. Still basically do because they don't have competence in the back end. But no, David Stearns has to tell us the endless reasons as to why. And I expanded on them last night, but I'll summarize them right here, everybody. It is 3 to 4 hold, and we'll get into it right here, right now. And it starts with as follows, everybody. It begins with, let's just start with the obvious one. It's that, we don't want to call up these kids because we don't want to hurt their confidence. We don't want to rush them up if we're in need of a roster fit because out of team desperation and team need. Well, here's the thing, buddy. The trade deadline is come and gone. If the Mets call up any of these kids in the immediate future, which they will, it's absolutely in hand with team need and desperation. So we can kick that to the curb because that's already contradicting yourself. Then you say to yourself, okay, you don't want to put them in a spot start situation. Fine. But are we just forgetting how there was a month and a half span leading into the All-Star break where the Mets had prime opportunity to consider someone for multiple turns of the rotation instead of the incompetence from having the Blade Tidwells, the Justin Hagemans, the Brandon Waddells, what have you in those spots, or even just pitchers that were underperforming? Because mind you, Senga was out with injury, Manaea was out with injury, Montas was out for a period of time that we know, Griffin Canning had his effing Achilles ruptured, Tyler McGill out not long after Senga. All these opportunities to consider one of the kids, yet for whatever reason, David Stearns decided not to do so. Now, there's many believing that this could go in hand with roster manipulation when you look at the fact that if, from what I understand is true, because I did look it up earlier and it did confirm, but there has been some contradicting going on with this. So if I'm wrong on this, I completely apologize. That's fine. From my understanding, around August 15th, around midway in the month of August, any prospect that is called up by the Mets or Major League Baseball will not have that first year of service time eaten. But they have to wait until right around mid-August to give them the call to make sure that they don't lose that year of service time. I believe that to be true from the times that we've seen this happen in the past. But if I'm wrong, if I have the data inaccurate, I apologize for that. I'm just emphasizing that as just another thing to bear in mind because the Mets clearly did not call up the kids earlier this year in hand with that. It was one, the lack of dominance that Brandon Sproat was doing, because Sproat really hasn't looked that great in AAA really until the past month and a half. Let's be frank. That's the matter of fact. He's had some solid, one-off outings here or there, but he has not been consistently dominant until the past month or so. So I can understand that argument more in the case of him, but there's been very little things to understand about Noah McLean, other than the fact that he just needs to get more of his footing down at the AAA level, because the results have always been there pretty much since the jump right away that he moved up from AA to AAA. So that's what we have on the pitching prospect front, everybody. And I would love to hear from you guys. Between Noah McLean and Brandon Sproat, should not be someone like Jonathan, because I would not be opposed to Ton coming straight from AA, because he's been rotting away in AA. I've been under the impression that maybe they're keeping him in AA. That's why I even waste him in AAA, because they know he's so much better. He's arguably the best pitching prospect in baseball. He has more strikeouts than anyone else in the minor leagues this year. Yet we're going to keep him in AA for how much longer? It feels like he's either inevitably getting moved up to Syracuse in the coming days, or he's going to get the call. And I doubt it's going to be the latter, so expect Jonathan in Syracuse hopefully sooner rather than later. But outside of Mr. McLean and Sproat, I want to know who you think makes most sense for the call-up in the comments down below. Let's get on now to our next topic today, which I'm actually really excited to get into. This is a player that I haven't had a chance to really break down too much the past couple weeks, because things have been so hectic leading up until the MLB trade deadline. But now that we're back and now that the deadline is done, we can really lean in on everything regarding this Mets team on the prospect end, which is why this week, you guys, in our Big Mets Updates video, not so much today, but in the days going forward, there's no minor league games that happen on Mondays, but outside of that, we will give you guys daily coverage of what's happening in the minor leagues from Port St. Lucie to AAA Syracuse. We did all season long, pretty much just up until the past 2 weeks or so, because the deadline made things really hectic, but we're back, we're locking in, and you want to know who's more locked in than any other batter appears at the minor league level right now? Oh yeah, it's Carson Benge. So let's have ourselves the healthy discussion on Benge right now, because listen, Brandon Sproat, gotta love him. A lot of things to enjoy about him, but we're going to move away from Brandon, and we're going to focus on what has been a jaw-droppingly good season for Carson Benge. Now, it's one thing for Benge to dominate the way that Benge has dominated there for High A Brooklyn earlier this year with Jacob Reimer, in which they both then got moved up to AA that we saw right around June 22nd or so. So if we do the math, both Benge and Reimer have been in AA for, a month and a half or so. It hasn't been that long. But Benge, who was batting north of 300 with a nice 900 OPS or so in High A, gets moved up to AA. Oh, no, yeah, he's even better. I mean, jaw-droppingly good, guys. I mean, I really don't remember the last time I've seen a batter at the AA level and this much of a sample size dominate as much as he is. This is just stupid. In 26 games for the AA Rumble Ponies, Carson Benge, Mets top outfield prospect, has 8 home runs, 20 RBIs, 16 walks, 4 stolen bases. Well, mind you, I think he had 14 there in High A prior. A 370 average. He's batting closer to 400 than 300. Make it make sense. And a well over 1,000 OPS. Benge is playing so good that I usually chop up and combine all the highlights for these prospects I discuss, but I'm just scrolling through the Rumble Ponies feed right now because he has a different highlight every single day. And you want to know why Benge has a different highlight every single day? Because he has 5 home runs in his past 6 games. This is stupid. I mean, we're just reaching the point of saying, all right, it's Michael Conforto time. Time to call up the kid and have him have a splash with us down the stretch there all the way from AA or so. I don't anticipate to see that happening, but for all the fans that were crying about, oh, why did we trade Drew Gilbert? Folks, look no further. This is a heavy reason as to why. Drew Gilbert has upside for sure, but Carson Benge is a far more polished prospect than Drew Gilbert ever was for this Mets team. And that is in direct hand as to why David Stearns' first draft selection as Mets president was none other than Benge in the 2024 first-round draft, coming out of OSU a year removed from being teammates with Noah McLean. Both McLean and Benge will be on this team together soon enough. And Benge, I'm telling you right now, if he was at the major league level, he'd probably perform decent. But obviously the Mets aren't going to rush someone like him, especially after landing Cedric Mullins. So expect Carson to be in the Mets minor leagues for the remainder of this season. But it's a matter of when, not if, this man gets moved up to Syracuse. I mean, Just ridiculous numbers that he's putting up right now. 8 home runs, 20 RBIs in 26 games. So, mind you, it's universally believed that out of all minor league levels, that AA is the most difficult and the most impressive. In case you're wondering, Wardy, why exactly is that? That's because there are top prospects at the AA level every year than there are at any other level more. So, AAA is a combined mix of quad A players, of guys that can't get over the hump to MLB, but they're too good in the minor leagues at the same time. Then you get guys that are fallen top prospects that really weren't able to blossom, and they're just, chilling out in AAA. Then you get the grizzled veterans who are no longer good for MLB, but they still have some pop, they still have some potential, and they still have an impact as a depth fit that you see in AAA. So it's usually one of those 3 options. In AA, it's, for the most part, a lot of really good top prospects, which is why Jonathan doing what he's doing is so impressive on a separate note. But Carson Benge, guys, my goodness, my God, my gracious. I mean, this kid really looks like he's going to be the Mets' top prospect if he isn't already. He's doing this in such a short period of time. And this is not at all a slight on a guy like Jet Williams, but the way that Jet Williams is so appealing has so much to do with his contact ability, his on-base ability, and obviously his versatility playing both the infield and the outfield. Carson Benge, why he will 1,000% be deemed as the Mets' top offensive prospect, if not already, by the season's end, I'm sure, is in direct to him because of the power, spreading for all fields, rock-solid defense in the outfield, and a guy who looks like he could probably impact the Mets better now than Jet Williams could. Not a slight on Jet, just a matter of fact from the current circumstance we find ourselves in. So, folks, Carson Benge, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. This man has been on absolute fire. I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to last, but here's the thing. He's been on fire all season. Between High A Brooklyn and now what you're seeing with the Rumble Bonies, this is a continuation of more of the same. He has been doing this all season long. So if you are not on the Carson Benge hype train yet, I highly implore you to hop on now while you still can, because Benge is going to be with the Major League level Mets before you know it, and when he is, hopefully sometime early next season, he is destined to do great things. There's so much to be appealed by with a player like him, but it's a matter of fact that Benge is still so young, just getting his career started, and there's so much upside that comes along with it. Look at Benge with the throw here. Look, demon, bomb, trying to get him out of home, and he does. What a fantastic throw. That's the kind of cannon that we could see handling center field for years to come. You know what I mean? Listen, Cedric Mullins loves Cedi. He's a rental. He's on for the next couple months, and that's that. There is a world where Carson Benge could be the Mets' center field option in 2026, depending on how he looks in spring training and going on from there. So in case any of you guys wonder maybe why the Mets don't do anything crazy for adding an outfielder this offseason, if they don't, this would go in direct hand as to why. Carson Benge, here to stay. Now it's just a question of when is he getting to Syracuse, and ultimately, when is he hitting Flushing, Queens? Now, folks, let's hop back to the main slide here, and let's get into our final topic of discussion today. The Mets have a baseball game that they're playing later on today, right? So let's talk about a little bit on these Metsies, and let's get into the following. They have a 3-game set against the Cleveland Guardians at home that each and every one you got to know about. And in case you guys don't know, the Guardians haven't been playing great baseball this year, but they're still looming right around 500 or so. They're 56-55, so the Mets at 63-49. And tonight, August 4th, you got the right-hander Ciccone. I probably butchered the last name. I apologize. And his 3.77 ERA, 5-4 record against the Samoan southbound Sean Manaea, who Sean is 101 on the year with a 2.08 ERA and 22 strikeouts. Manaea is looking for a length outing. Hopefully, we can get 6 solid innings out of Sean. That'd be amazing tonight. That's a goal with someone like him. And then game 2, we got the southpaw and Allen with his 7-9 record and just over a 4 ERA facing off against Clay Holmes. Clay, this is a big statement outing for Clay. Because if Clay goes out and doesn't give the Mets quality again, as I said, it's one thing to talk about Noel McLean or Brandon Sproat. There is a world where both of these guys impact the Mets this year because of their lack of because of their lack of rotation depth right now. Holmes is profiling better and better as a piggyback option where, at minimum, one of Sproat or McLean should pair with him and say, Holmes throws 4 innings, then Sproat or McLean throws 3 to 4 innings, right? Or vice versa. Sproat or McLean starts his game for 3-4 plus innings, and then you bring in someone like the following in Clay Holmes. And speaking of innings, this is something I want to emphasize because I have seen Mets fans say, oh, Wardy, why are you talking about the Mets and their innings limit that they have with Noel McLean and Brandon Sproat? Well, for one, there's no actual clarity if there's an innings limit. So that in itself is a fallacy. Secondly, when we evaluate how many innings they have actually pitched so far this year, there's still a lot of wiggle room. To get off of talking about Clay Holmes in this series preview just for a second, because I don't want to forget this, Sproat in 2024 pitched 116 innings. This season, he's pitched 95. You know, there's likely at least 50 to 60 innings left in the tank for Sproat without being at all cause for concern on health. When you look at Noel McLean, 109 innings that he pitched last year, he's already pitched 104 this year. There's a likelihood that he's at least going to be getting 40 plus innings pitched this season, which again would be more than impactful for the Mets if they could get that from these guys down the stretch this season. So for people that are under this notion that the Mets absolutely are going to be having these guys on stubborn innings limit, simply isn't true. It's all going to be indicative as to how their health is, how they're looking, and they have all the newfound technology to tell you really if they're in good standing with their pitchers and their health. So that's my little tangent going back to McLean there and Sproat, but it was worthwhile. So to expand more here, you got Allen and Holmes for game 2. Holmes was 3.45 ERA, 9-8 record. And then the series finale that we have, everybody, is going to be Mr. Williams with his 3.33 ERA. He's having a very good year for the Guardians against David Pearson with his 2.8 ERA there, 7.4 record versus 6-4. So going to be probably a pitcher's duel again there that we see between Peterson and this time in Williams. And what's important for the Mets, it's not just important to win at least 2 out of the next 3 games, if not sweeping the Guardians. It's imperative to hit with runners in scoring position. And it's imperative to get length out of your rotation so that way you don't completely tax your bullpen the way that you have been. My concern here is I think we're going to see a decent bit of more of the same in the regard of the Mets' struggles that they've had this year. And as that happens, should that happen, we'll be here live reacting to it on our post-game coverage right away to tell you what's the good, what's the bad, and what's the ugly for a Mets team that is still obviously one of the better teams in all Major League Baseball. But just because you're north of being the first team out of all teams in the NL East when looking at standings doesn't change the fact that you two are flawed and the Mets need to get these flaws fixed and fast. Mets fans, thank you so much again for watching. I greatly appreciate the support. Juan Soto needs to wake up. Goes without saying. I would love to see this guy bat even the Mendoza line with runners in scoring position, yet he has yet to do so at all this season. I would love to see this Mets team be in unison. I would love to see Cedric Mullins have a big series. I would love to see the youngsters 5 through 9 this lap continue to ball out, in which they have been sporadically over the past week or so. That's what I'm hoping to see, everybody. So I hope to see you there for all of our Mets coverage throughout the week between the Guardians and then what is next in store for them. Thank you guys for hitting that like and subscribe button on your way out. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And this is your guy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.